went to a Nerf War today, and I didn't enjoy it at all. Flywheels are overpowered garbage. Was a post that somebody made proclaiming that flywheel blasters are inherently more overpowered than anything else, which not only myself, but a lot of other people took exception to, and I feel like I'm qualified to speak on this topic because I have a wide variety of experience with a lot of different blasters, especially being someone who started off doing just Springer blasters and slowly moved into flywheels and now prefer flywheels for a lot of other reasons, but obviously I can't do this alone. I need somebody with actual hardcore competitive experience, so I think we'll get Jangular's opinion as well. Many of you may know this, but when I first started off, my first real taste of any kind of Nerf combat was actually at a local place where I lived in Boise called Dart Wars, and that place was, it was a thing. It was like public matchmaking for Nerf. I could go there, you know, bring my blasters, pay an entry fee, walk in, and play against whoever else happened to be there. And usually it wasn't hard getting a game going, and there was always usually, you know, anywhere from 10, 20, sometimes even 40, 50 people there. It was pretty crazy. But I had an inherent flaw, or rather it had an inherent flaw, in that the arena was basically a hallway with scattered cover that formed a hallway, and they had big boxes that you could sit in, like refrigerator boxes with holes cut in them, so you could shoot out of, but you were in the box, so you were safe. And the problem was that the people who worked there knew the most efficient way to kind of farm people for tags, and what they would do is they would use anywhere from 3 to 4.5 foot long piece of 1/2-inch PVC, and since the most plentiful dart at the time, for whatever reason they decided, was the Busby sticky dart. So that meant anything that was like flywheel powered that didn't shoot Busby stickies, and even if you did have something flywheel powered that shot Busby stickies, it didn't go very far, or anything that was magazine fed was pretty much completely worthless, because while they did throw out elite darts, you can imagine how quickly elite darts destroyed themselves with people stepping on them and whatnot, and there weren't dart sweeps in between rounds. In fact, most of the time they only did dart sweeps, or well, you did self-dart sweeps yourself, trying to fill up your magazines by walking around picking up darts, but you'd wind up with a lot of DMs and a lot of issues, and basically if you were using elite darts, it was completely pointless. Busby stickies were the way to go, and they decided, well, we're going to be using these blowguns, which makes it extremely easy for stickies to work even if the foam bodies are destroyed. All we really need to do is shoot rubber heads at people, and they were all very fit jock types, so they could blow extremely hard. And they were absolute, not only were they extremely efficient, but they were actually really, really mean about it. They would turn a corner, stick a piece of blowpipe in your face, and hit you point blank. And it was strong enough that one of the times this happened to me, the guy broke my glasses, which was ridiculous. And it would get really annoying if they would do this to, let's say, my wife. There's a reason why I stopped going to this place, and well, their original flagship location is now gone, and honestly, I don't really miss it. And no matter what you tried to discuss with the owner, like, hey, this is a problem, basically what would happen is every week I went there, anybody who's new that wasn't using a blowgun would then show up the next weekend with a blowgun, and then they'd probably still get destroyed because the people who've been using blowguns for months and months and months are going to absolutely decimate them, and then they just stop showing up. And I couldn't get any friends to come with me anymore because none of them liked playing the game, and most of that was actually, in my opinion, not that blowguns were necessarily overpowered, but the arena was designed completely to make blowguns as effective as possible, because you literally could not get towards them without pushing it towards them. It was a hallway, there was no way to flank. They would just sit in the back and pelt you with darts, so there's literally nothing you could do except the same exact thing back at them. And it became extremely annoying, and yes, blowguns were overpowered in that scenario, but the blaster itself did not make them overpowered. It may have given them an advantage, it may have been extremely cheesy and annoying, but it did not make them overpowered, because they could be tagged out by some kid crouching behind a box with a Maverick. It's just it never really got to that point. In fact, in that exact situation, I would claim the players were good, the weapons were efficient, but the arena was absolute crap. There was lots of cover, it was completely linear, there was no way to push forwards and tag them out or flank them from behind or anything like that, because obviously their rate of fire is absolute garbage, but they could just sit in the back and destroy people, and Now I wonder how that's going to go with things like this. I mean, obviously I had like the Boomco pistol and stuff like that just before I stopped going there, which helped a lot, but I had to bring my own Boomco darts, and these were, you know, things I had to purchase myself, and thankfully Boomco darts are nigh indestructible, so it worked out pretty well for me. And even in our local games, Flywheel blasters, granted there's only like 1 or 2 FDLs on the field and everybody else is shooting something around anywhere from 130 to 150, is completely kind of toned down by the whole fact that there's a lot of caliburns on the field. And while there is cover with trees, there isn't a whole lot of cover. There's one good flanking route, so you can come up behind people, but caliburns kind of hit that sweet spot of fire rate, accuracy, and of course power. With any kind of basic caliburn you buy and put together, able to hit 200 FPS without even really trying, and that's the high mark of our cap limits. While getting a flywheeler to hit that hard is actually pretty difficult. This is a pretty tuned up flywheeler with the whole brushless system and everything in it, and while it does perform extremely good, and I could get better performance out of it by using a slightly different flywheel cage and multiple stages and whatnot, this is pretty typical of what you'd expect to see from like an FDL and stuff like that. And well, it's again like a 160, 170 if I'm lucky. This is going to hit 200 pretty much every single time, and not only that, it's going to be extremely accurate, especially at long range. And there's kind of a thing, when you have like a long-range blaster that fires slowly but fast enough to make things matter, you typically stand in the back and pick targets off. Meanwhile, if you have something that's capable of rapid fire, not only will you burn through your darts quickly, but chances are you're going to be sitting up front to, you know, do things like suppress targets and whatnot, which means that these people are going to use far less ammo and get far more tags than somebody using something like this, unless the enemy is pushing. That's when something like this is absolutely going to decimate something like this. And honestly, the person matters more than the blaster, because I myself, while I am a pretty good shot, I'm obviously a massive target, and obviously I can't move very fast for very long, because I'm a big target. That's the easiest way of putting it. So I'm not exactly a great player, and you could probably give me just about any blaster unless it's like something HPA that's turned up way too high. But even then, I'd probably just get flanked and tagged out by some kid with a nemesis anyway, so what exactly does it matter? So honestly, there's a lot of factors that go into why something would be considered overpowered, but definitely not something that would be like, oh, this is the God Blaster, it is the only one that does not happen. And so that post drew a lot of ire from a lot of people, but I figured, who's better to talk about this than one of the players on one of the best competitive teams in the country right now, who has more experience than I do and more experience than pretty much anybody else, and is also a super freaking competitive person. So I'm going to hand it off to my pal Jangular, who's going to give us his opinions on the whole overpoweredness factor in an actual competitive setting.
So you want to talk about balance. That's a pretty broad topic, but if we want to hone in on whether or not flywheel blasters are overpowered, the short answer is no, not really. The long answer is probably too long for this entire video, but we'll try and be brief and touch on a few points here. Broadly, balance can be dictated by a lot of different things. If you've got a heavily modified rapid strike and you're playing with a bunch of people that are running stock blasters or blasters that are 10 years old, not modified, you're gonna have an advantage there, and that should be fairly apparent. Now, you could still be plenty foolish and run right into other people's darts, and it wouldn't make a difference what blast you have, and that's one of the big points as well, is player comes into this in a large scale. So you got to think about what the quality of player is, and what the field is like, and what the other players are bringing with them. If we want to touch on 3 things. So starting with player skill, as I mentioned, if you're doing foolish things with the blaster, it doesn't matter what blast you have. I've known plenty of people that have had the latest and greatest thing, but playing tactically or playing smart, or however you want to look at it, wasn't really what they wanted to focus on, and that's fine. Just don't expect to, you know, raffle stomp every person just because you have the best blaster around. That's just not going to happen. Now, looking at things in terms of field and what is available, if you've got a high-powered, well-tuned Springer on a largely open field with minimal cover and a lot of long sight lines for you to utilize, you're probably going to have a better time than the average flywheel blaster, because you're going to be able to shoot them before they can reliably put darts on you in most cases. And the inverse of that is just as applicable. If you're in a small enclosed space or a space with lots of cover and lots of tight corners and things like that, the flywheel blaster is probably going to perform better. You're going to give yourself more opportunities to take advantage of the benefits of that flywheel platform. Now, there are also things to consider, such as the fact that Springer blasters currently are able to more reliably hit higher FPS values, and flywheel blasters have a better rate of fire. So you're really just trading things off. And you've got better ammo preservation with a Springer generally than you do with a flywheel blaster. Again, that can come down to player ability and what they're accustomed to and how comfortable they are with their platform. But assuming all things are equal, these are some things we can kind of extract and utilize for a discussion. So I don't want to go too much further into this because there are a lot of things that I could get into in terms of details and whatnot, but I just want to leave you with, don't jump to conclusions about something being overpowered or gonna break the game or things like that. It's really generally not the case. I remember when Out of Darts brought the initial Hurricane out to the Burn games. It was awesome. I didn't really think it was broken or overpowered, same as the 250 FPS bow that Thundercrunk had that could lock down alleys if you didn't play against it properly when we were running about 100 FPS blasters otherwise. So it's all about how you go into things and what you expect going into them. If you look at someone that has some crazy build or whatnot, you're like, how am I going to beat that? Well, you've already kind of beat yourself. Instead, something you can do is try using different blasters. Try using blasters you consider underpowered for whatever reason. That will give you more insight into those platforms and how they play. When you know how something plays, you start to learn the weaknesses of each platform. And when you know those, you know how to exploit them when you're playing against them. So there's a lot of things you can think about and a lot of things you can take away from even just thinking about balance. I tend to think of it in terms of competitive play because that's really where my focus tends to be currently, but there's balance in all kinds of games. So before you jump to conclusions, just have a discussion or sit back and think on it for a little bit. Just need to add one quick thing, and that is, don't think that what I said means that no blaster is going to give you an advantage over another one. Balance means that some things are better than other things depending on the situation. And of course, a well-tuned blaster and well-made blaster is going to perform better than one that is not in most cases. My point is that in most cases, those advantages are not insurmountable. Now, I'm sure there may be a case where that could be so, but in my experience so far, it has generally not been the case. That said, now I'll send you back to Walcom.
Hopefully you enjoyed that little segment of Jangular talking about the world of competitive Nerf, and I respect his opinion highly, and that's why I asked him, and I thank him profusely for taking time out of his busy schedule to talk to us about such things. And of course, you can find a link to Jangular's channel up in the top right corner, or of course down in the description box below. Check him out. He's on a little bit of a hiatus right now, but he just recently put up a video, and hopefully you can encourage him to put up more videos when he has the time. If anything, I hope you were entertained and learned something. I don't want this video to go on too much longer, but if you have some discussion, and I'm sure there will be, please sound off in the comments section below. I'd love to hear about it and build a healthy discussion about this topic, because it's something that kind of needs to be checked up on every once in a while. I'm Walcom S7. Thank you very much for watching this video, and of course, I hope to see you in an entirely different one.
You gotta